Hello and welcome to yet another episode of All About Bikes. And before we get into the questions, there are two things that we're going to talk about towards the end of the video. A, we've got a small announcement, and two, we're going to give you a handy, easy to use riding tip. So now let's get straight into the questions. And let's start our questions with Instagram first. We've got Atul, who wants to know, is the rear disc necessary on a 160cc motorcycle? I'd say that if you have single channel ABS, that is, there's no ABS at the back, I'd be happy to have a drum brake version than a disc, because chances of me locking it up would be lesser. But no, you don't need a disc brake at the back for a 160cc motorcycle. Yeah. Next up, we've got Jay Setna, and Jay Setna wants to know what is a comfortable, good scooter to go for. Is the Ntorq, TVS Ntorq worth buying? Yes, of course, it's worth buying. It's a nice, good looking, good to ride, nice sounding scooter. You'll feel good about riding it and owning it. The only thing is that it's not as fuel efficient as its counterparts in the same class, but a lovely scooter nonetheless. Next, we've got Dr. Strangest, and Dr. Strangest wants to, or tells us that he's only used Platina in the past, way back, and now he's looking at upgrading and wants to know which is a better bike to go for, the Classic 350 or the Honda CB350. So between the Classic 350 and the Honda CB350, the Honda CB350 is by far the better choice. It's a more modern motorcycle. The Classic is now old in the tooth in every which way you look at it. However, there will be a new Classic that will come sometime this year, but we don't know when. So if you want to buy a motorcycle now, go ahead, buy the Honda. Amit wants to know, when will Yamaha launch the MT125? We don't think Yamaha is going to launch the MT125 this year for sure. Heg Pro wants to know how the Svartpilen is, and Svartpilen is a 250, and should he choose it over the Duke and the new Honda CB350. So the Svartpilen is the more upright motorcycle, like the Duke, based on the Duke. Between the Duke 250 and the Svartpilen is cheaper, and of course it looks quite different, unique. So it's a smallish motorcycle though, so if you're not very tall, go for the Svartpilen. The CB350 is a complete opposite to the Svartpilen in terms of look and feel. It's a take on, it's like a normal street motorcycle decked up with the old looking CB clothing. So that's the difference. So you've got a modern looking motorcycle, a very different cafe-ish, not cafe-ish, but let's say a different take on neo retro, and the CB is more old school retro. So you'd have to make a choice, but Svartpilen is a great motorcycle to ride and live with. So if you like that, go for it. And now let's take some questions off Facebook. And first we've got Kuldeep, and Kuldeep wants to know which is the best 110cc motorcycle to buy. So we'd say that we'd suggest two. The TVS Radeon. It might look like the splendors of yore, but it's a lovely motorcycle to ride. And of course you've got the not new age Splendor, but the new age Passion from Hero, which is again a lovely motorcycle to ride. Our suggestion, ride the two, see which you like. Shubham wants to know if there's any news on the new BS6 Hero Xpulse 200T. It's been there on the cards, but I guess Hero's taking its own sweet time. Nope, we don't have a specific date, but hopefully we'll see it this year. Now, Somveer says that he owns a Classic 350 and he's looking for a change. He wants a motorcycle that's not like the Classic 350, and he's capped his budget at 3 lakhs. So he says that he's going to use it more on the highway and less on the city. In the city. So we'd say your options would be, you could, if you want a more upmarket brand, you could look at the BMW G310R. It's just about 3 lakhs on road. You could also, if you want to go lower down, you could look at the Duke 250, and you could also look at the Suzuki Gixxer SF250, which is a nice, comfortable, vibe-free, reliable motorcycle to have. So these would be the three options at various price points for you. Swaraj has asked us about the cornering clearance of the Meteor, and if it's a good motorcycle when it comes to handling. He's also said that he's great at scraping foot pegs even on the Himalayan. So will the Meteor's foot pegs get in the way? yes, Meteor's Footpegs will get in the way. In terms of handling, it's a good motorcycle, but of course, given its nature and what a product definition of being a cruiser, it has limited ground clearance and you would end up scraping its pegs. But even while scraping the pegs, it would still be planted, so no issues there really. Anijesh wants to know which is a better 400cc motorcycle to buy. Should he buy the Duke 390 or the Dominar 400? He's heard that the Dominar 400 works better in the long run compared to the Duke 390. So if you like a more upright, lighter feeling, sportier motorcycle, then I think the 390 makes a lot of sense. It's also an younger looking motorcycle than the Dominar. The Dominar is heavier, it's great on highways, agreed, but between the two, I think it's a question of A, what you like in terms of styling, and are you okay living with a heavier motorcycle? I wouldn't be, I'd pick the 390 Duke. Santu has written to us and he says that he loves the Interceptor 650, but it's too expensive and he wanted a motorcycle in the same mold. He also looked at the Meteor 350 or is currently looking at it, but he wants to know when would the Interceptor 350 come because he likes the old school styling or the styling of the Interceptor. So the spy shots, and we've seen there's indication that the Interceptor 350 will come, but chances are there are more popular products, replacements on cars like the Classic, and also a motorcycle to sit under the Meteor, a lower, cheaper single seat version motorcycle that's there, which we believe might be called the Hunter. So all those are there, and then we'll probably have the Interceptor, so 350. So if you're willing to wait, and we don't know how long that wait might be, you could wait, or you could go for the Meteor. I mean, we've been living with it, riding it, and we've really had no issues. It's apart from styling, I think in every other way you're going to get what you get with the Interceptor on the Meteor. Maybe the Interceptor will be slightly more friendly in the city, but Meteor overall is also proving to be a good motorcycle. So if you can't wait, go for the Meteor. Akshu says he's been looking to buy a motorcycle. He's confused between the R15, the KTM RC200 in the fairing category, or should he just go for a naked and buy a 250? I would say I would pick the 250. Fairings don't really matter that much. You're looking at a more powerful, more torquey, larger engine motorcycle, and fairing in the city, you're not really going to, unless you want to spend a lot of time on the track, tucked in, etc. Maybe you want the fairing, or if you like the looks of a fairing, but would you pay more for looks or pay more for performance? I'd definitely pay more for performance. So for me, it's the 250. Gerald wants to know whether he should buy the Dominar 400 or the KTM Adventure 390. He's going to use the motorcycle mostly in the city and do some highway travel. Bottom line, the 390 Adventure, no question. Srivatsa wants to know, I mean, he's got a budget of 2.5 lakhs and he's 6 feet tall. He wants a motorcycle. What should he look for? So we'd say, because you're tall, maybe you should look at ADV options. First option, the Himalayan, it fits in your budget, and if you can expand your budget and look at the Adventure, KTM Adventure 250, then that's a good option too. And if you want something else, then the other option would be to go for the Xpulse 200, buy the Rally Kit seat, and that will automatically give you more space in the seating triangle. Also go for the handlebar risers, and suddenly you've got a more open seating triangle, so that could also work depending on what you want in terms of performance and how much you're willing to spend. Abel wants to know which is the best scooter for beginners, and we'd say you want something light, something manageable, something maneuverable, and we love the TVS Zest. I don't know if you've heard about it because we've not spoken about it in a long time. And but Zest is a great scooter. It's fast, it's light, it's efficient, it's fun to ride, it's easy to manage. And now let's take some questions off YouTube. And first we've got one SIP, one SIP, however it is. And SIP or SIP wants to know, is the electric bike revolution right around the corner? 5-6 years, will we see electric bikes flooding our market, and because of that, does it make sense to invest in an IC engine now? So I'd say yes, of course, it makes complete sense to invest in an IC engine. It's still, even if we were to go by your expectations of the electric revolution happening in the next 6 years, you're still not going to own a motorcycle or whatever for more than 5-6 years. You would want to change, and if not, you'd also always want something old school in your garage eventually. So yeah, it makes all the sense to buy IC engines even today. Pradanya says that he's 5'6" and he wants to buy a new motorcycle, 80 to 100 kilometers over the weekend, and 400 to 500 kilometers once or twice a month as touring. His motorcycle of choice, MT15, also looking at the Apache 200 4V, and says might also consider the RR 310. Which of these should he go for? Budget is limited at 3 lakh rupees. Pillion comfort is not a problem because he'd be riding alone all the time. You like the MT15, MT15 is what you should go for. Sure, the 200V will pack in a little more performance, and then if you go to the RR 310, of course, a lot more performance. But these also come with reduced fuel economy, and depending on how you want to ride, I think the MT15 is might not be as quick as these motorcycles, but it's equally exciting to ride, and it's very intuitive, very involving, loads of fun. So if you like the MT15, I'd say go with the MT15. Mohammed wants to know when would Royal Enfield launch the Scrambler 650. Makes sense for them to launch, but clearly they're focusing on the 650 Cruiser now. We've seen spy shots, so the Scrambler will happen. Maybe not this year, maybe next. Next up, we've got Vishnujit as well as Raghav, and they both want to know when will Bajaj launch the Pulsar RS 400. My thing would be probably never, but then never say never. So the thing is that the RS 200 hasn't done well, so it doesn't make sense to bring in an RS 400. But you never know. I mean, if it's a product for the taking, the design's there, the hardware is there. We've seen the Dominar 400 already, so all that is already in place. It's just a matter of putting it together and bring it out. But business-wise, I don't think it makes sense, especially given the RS 200 hasn't done well. Rohit wants to know how is the Suzuki Burgman Street for long distance touring. I don't know what you mean by long distance, but if you have the will, you can long distance tour on whatever. So Burgman Street, if you think that the design would make it more comfortable for touring compared to, let's say, a more straight up like the Axis, for instance, well, not necessarily. Of course, it allows you to move your legs around when you're riding, so that's something that can help. But otherwise, I think if you want to tour, you can tour no matter what the machine. Next up, we've got Sai Teja, and he wants to know which should he buy, the Dominar 250 or the Dominar 400. We would say buy the Dominar 250, save the money, have a better riding experience. It's a more refined motorcycle. It's more accessible in terms of power delivery. It's friendlier. Overall, it just feels a happier motorcycle than the Dominar 400. The Jazz has asked us what is better for the Honda Highness CB350. Protection film or ceramic coating. I'm a little old school, so I'd say ceramic coating. I mean, I don't enjoy having a polythene wrapped around my motorcycle, so I'd say ceramic coating. So Arish wants to know if there's a new cruiser coming from Honda, and also what the Royal Enfield Hunter 350 is going to be like. So the Royal Enfield Hunter 350 will sit under the Meteor. It will be it'll be friendlier than the Meteor 350 in terms of seating ergos for city riding. It should feel lighter. It should feel more accessible to a lot of people. So that's where they're going. The Hunter's going to sit under the Meteor to expand the base for Royal Enfield. As for a cruiser from Honda, they are going to expand the CB platform, and the next motorcycle based on the CB350 Highness will be launched on 16th, and it is essentially a sportier looking version of the CB. So instead of chrome and all of that, you'll have painted parts, and it should follow the same philosophy that we've seen with the CB 1100. CB1100 RS. That's the difference there, and that's the difference we will probably see between the Highness CB350 and what we believe the upcoming bike to be the CB350 RS. Karthikeyan's asking us about whether we have any news on the XSR 155 and the Honda CB150R. So both motorcycles are not on the cards as we know it, at least for this year. Now, I don't know, given the number of times everybody's asked about the XSR 155, and if Yamaha has been watching, then maybe they will just launch it this year. I don't know, and put an end to this constant questions around the XSR. But as of now, no XSR 155 and no CBR 150R. Next up, we've got Rahul, and he's asked us what motorcycle he should buy between 200cc and 350cc. He's looking at a daily commute of about 70 kilometers on the highway, and it needs to be good for the pillion, and he will make occasional trips of 200 kilometers. So we'd say go for the KTM 250 Adventure. Comfortable for the rider, comfortable for the pillion, good on the highway, good on bad roads. So go for the Adventure, and it sits between 200cc and 350cc, so it fits your bill. So Manju wants to know whether it's worth spending extra for the Apache 200 over the Apache 160. So it finally boils down to what you want. If you're going to live with a motorcycle essentially in the city, and when you even go out on tours and stick to 80-90 kilometers per hour, the 160 will work brilliantly. But as enthusiasts, I think for us, more power is always better, more engine capacity is always better. So I'd say go for the 200, it's worth the extra money. Arun has asked us if we have any further news on the Apache RTR 310, the second motorcycle to be released by TVS based on the BMW collaboration RR310 platform. We expect the motorcycle to come out this year. I think it's a motorcycle that will draw in more numbers than the RR310. The RR310 numbers are decent, they're not great, they're probably not as good as TVS expected, and the RTR is what TVS is known for more than the RR. So should be out this year. We don't have specific dates, but would make sense to bring it out this year, yes. Next up, we've got Bengal Rider, and he says that he's 6 feet tall. He rides a Gixxer 155 right now, and he's looking at upgrading. He wants to know whether he should go for the Dominar 400 or the Interceptor 650. So the Dominar probably is more, how should we say, exciting to ride in the sense the way it delivers its power, because it's still based on the 390 engine. So it's not so much a torquey engine as it is top-end friendly. And the Dominar is also, it might not look it, but it's a great handling motorcycle, and it brakes really well. We've ridden it on a racetrack, and it works there too. So, so in terms of riding dynamics and performance, I think the Dominar 400 is a more involving ride. The Interceptor is a more relaxed motorcycle. It's more about torque, it's more about old school charm, and it's in terms of engine, gearbox, chassis, all that, it's great. It could do with a slightly better suspension. So that's the choice you need to make, whether you want something that's exciting to ride and great around corners, and also works on tour, which is the Dominar 400, or you want to look at something that's a little more old school, a little more stylish, and a little more laid back, more torque, which is the Interceptor 650. So that's the difference, or that's the differentiation that you need to make. And for being 6 feet, I think their seating triangle should be similar. You shouldn't have an issue on either motorcycle. Next up, we've got Jaswant, and Jaswant wants to know which is a better motorcycle to go for, the Dominar 250 or the Apache 200. He's essentially looking for a motorcycle to ride in the city, and he wants to know how's the Dominar 250 in the city. So the Apache is a nicer motorcycle in the city, the way it's set up, the way you sit on it, the way the weight feels, and the braking, etc. So overall, it's a nicer motorcycle in the city to filter through traffic and to park, to move around. So if I'm riding in the city, I'd definitely go for the Apache keys. It's not like the Dominar 250 is bad, but compared to the Apache, it's certainly more cumbersome. Out on the highway, the Dominar might be a little more relaxed, but the Apache isn't too bad either. So, but given that your focus is the city, we'd say go for the Apache. Busa wants to know which is the ideal bike to buy for under 2 lakh rupees. Now, of course, there is no ideal motorcycle, but he's given his criteria. He says it has to be fuel efficient, it has to have a nice suspension, and it has to have sporty looks. So by nice suspension, I'm assuming that you're looking for a comfortable ride. And in this class, I think the Xtreme 160R is the best bet for whatever you're looking for. In our opinion, that's the motorcycle to buy in the 160cc class. So that's what you should look at. And if you are looking at something in the 200cc class, then the Apache 200 is the one to go for. X-Blade Xtreme 200S or the Pulsar 220F. That's what Aman wants to know, which of these three motorcycles he should go for. Priority, pillion comfort, weekend touring, confident handling. So if I look at all three things, the Pulsar 220 is now old motorcycle, old in the tooth, any which way you look at it. So in my opinion, it boils down to between the Xtreme 200 and the Honda X-Blade. The X-Blade is a more conventional motorcycle in the way it rides. So it's refined and it has very easy power delivery and it'll do whatever you ask of it. So it's a very safe bet to go for if you can live with the transformer wannabe face. The Xtreme 200 is slightly gruffer compared to the X-Blade, but in terms of rider involvement, in terms of being a more exciting motorcycle to ride, the Xtreme is fits the bill better. Between these two, I'd pick the Xtreme because I'd like a motorcycle that can have rough edges, but it's more fun to ride and more satisfying to ride. And that's a wrap on All About Bikes for this week. And like we said at the start, we've got two things to say. First is the announcement. All About Bikes, we're just taking a short sabbatical, so you will not see this series or the next episode next week, but we will come back. That's one bit. The second bit, of course, is the riding tip. So let's say we'll still stick to city riding, and one of the best things that you can do for yourself as a rider, be it in the city or otherwise, is to develop your vision, is to have better peripheral vision. Now, when you're filtering through traffic and motorcycles, we have to, if you're in cities like Mumbai, Delhi or wherever, and you're riding at a reasonably decent pace, you're not crawling all the time. And so you need to plug gaps. And when you want to plug gaps, my suggestion is look at the gap and not the vehicles around the gap. So if you want to avoid something, don't look at what you want to avoid, look where you want to go, and you'd find it's surprisingly easy for you to be able to get a smoother rhythm in that sense if you look into the gap instead of the thing that you want to look at. What it also does is, let's say suddenly somebody brakes, if you're looking at that, you will definitely go into that, but if you're looking into the gap, involuntarily you will steer away from that because that's where you're looking at, so you'll go where you're looking. And also the other suggestion is don't tail. If you're following, always keep a little bit of gap even when you're filtering through traffic, because it just gives you that much extra seconds to stop in time before you go into something. So vision, very important. Look for the gaps. If you look for the gaps, you'll make the gaps. I hope it's helpful, and even though All About Bikes will not be back next week, we'll have other videos. So do subscribe, do hit the bell icon and keep watching us, and thank you so much for watching.